Are you tired of shouldering everyone else's emotional weight, feeling like you're constantly running on empty? Do you often find yourself sacrificing your own needs and desires to keep the peace in relationships? You're not alone. We've all been there at some point, trying to fix every problem that comes our way. But beneath this drive lies a deeper question. Why do we take on so much responsibility in the first place? This video is for anyone who feels like they're constantly juggling multiple emotional loads, feeling drained and depleted by the relationships in their life. We'll explore the roots of people-pleasing and overthinking, examining how childhood trauma and emotional neglect can lead to a pattern of fixer behavior that's both exhausting and suffocating. You might wonder how you started taking on so much responsibility in your relationships. It's not because you're a control freak or a perfectionist, although those traits can certainly contribute to the problem. The truth is, often it's a cry for help from deep within. When we experience childhood trauma, emotional neglect, or even just inconsistent parenting, our brains develop a faulty wiring that makes us believe we're responsible for others' emotions and well-being. Think of it like a garden that's been left untended. Without proper care, the weeds of anxiety and people-pleasing start to grow. We overthink every interaction, second-guessing ourselves until we're convinced we've done something wrong. And then, in an attempt to fix the problem, we take on too much responsibility. It's a vicious cycle that can be incredibly draining. I know someone who grew up with a single parent who was struggling to make ends meet. They developed a habit of anticipating their parents' every need, even when it meant sacrificing their own desires and happiness. This coping mechanism became so ingrained that couldn't help but do the same in their adult relationships. You might think you're doing the right thing by always being there for others, but the truth is, this pattern can be a sign that something's off inside. Think of it like trying to hold water in your cupped hands. At first, it works fine, but eventually, the weight becomes too much and your hands start to crumble. So, let's take a closer look at the consequences of being the fixer. At first, you might feel like you're making a difference, like you're saving the day. But, as we've already explored, taking on too much responsibility can lead to codependency. You start to lose yourself in someone else's problems, and before you know it, your identity gets lost in the process. Think of it like trying to hold water in a leaking bucket. No matter how hard you try, eventually the water is going to spill out. That's what happens when you're constantly fixing others' problems without setting boundaries or prioritizing your own needs. Your relationships can become strained, and even more importantly, so does your mental health. I've seen this play out in my own life, and I'm sure many of you have too. We start to feel like we're not good enough, like we need to constantly prove ourselves to others. It's a vicious cycle that leads to self-sabotage, because deep down, we know we can't keep up the charade forever. So, how can you start recognizing your patterns of fixer behavior? It's not always easy to acknowledge, but the first step is becoming aware of when you're taking on too much responsibility in relationships. Think about a situation where you've caught yourself overexerting or consistently finding ways to rescue someone else. Maybe it's a friend who always calls at 10 p.m., expecting you to drop everything for their crisis, or a family member who relies on you to solve their problems. Imagine a seesaw in your mind. On one side is the person needing help. On the other is you, trying to keep things balanced. But when you're constantly tilting towards fixing others, the seesaw starts to tip out of balance. You start to feel resentful, burnt out, and yet you can't seem to stop yourself from jumping in. Take a moment to reflect. What triggers this behavior in you? Is it a desire to be needed or fear of being alone? Identifying these patterns is the first step towards change. One of the most challenging things for fixers is learning to say no. But what if I told you that saying no could be a liberating experience? Think about it. When we constantly put others' needs before our own, we start to lose touch with what's truly important. We begin to feel like a band-aid on someone else's boo-boo, rather than a whole person in our own right. So, what can you do instead of being the fixer? Let's take a look at 7 practical tips for creating a more balanced life. First, prioritize your own self-care. Just as a plane needs to fuel up before taking off, we need to recharge our own batteries. That might mean saying no to one more commitment, or setting aside time each day for activities that nourish your mind and soul. For example, I have a friend who's been struggling with burnout, so she started waking up an hour earlier each morning just to meditate and enjoy a cup of coffee. Next, acknowledge and respect your own needs. It's okay to ask for help or to take a break when you're feeling drained. Think of it like filling up your gas tank. If you don't put in the right fuel, you'll be stuck on the side of the road. So, communicate your boundaries clearly with others. We'll explore 3 more tips next. As we wrap up today's conversation, I want to leave you with a thought that has been resonating with me lately. We've talked about setting boundaries, communicating effectively, and not being the fixer in relationships. But let's get real for a moment. It's one thing to intellectualize these concepts, but it's another thing entirely to truly embody them. To be honest, I still struggle with this myself. There have been times when I felt like if everyone else is okay, then I must not be doing enough. It's as if my worth was tied to their happiness. But that's a heavy burden to carry. Think of it like a garden. You can't make the flowers bloom if they're not getting the right amount of sunlight and water. You can tend to them, nurture them, but ultimately, their growth is up to them. Your role is to create a supportive environment, but not to force it. And that's exactly what we've been talking about today, creating a space where you can be yourself, without apology or expectation of fixing others. As we wrap up our conversation today, I want to leave you with a gentle reminder that taking care of yourself is not a luxury, but a necessity. Just as an airplane oxygen mask would drop down for emergency situations, your own self-care should be your top priority. Not because you're selfish, but because without it, you'll be left gasping for air. Think about the relationships in your life. Have you been putting others' needs before yours? Have you been trying to fix their problems instead of facing your own? It's time to take a step back and assess what's truly going on. Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. Fill yourself up first, and then see how you can support those around you. It's okay to say no, to set boundaries, and to prioritize your own healing. In fact, it's essential for building healthy relationships in the long run. I encourage you to continue on this journey of self-discovery, not just for yourself, but also for those who care about you. As you step away from the fixer mindset, remember that every small victory counts. It's okay to acknowledge your own needs and boundaries without feeling guilty or responsible for others' emotions. Celebrate those moments when you say no, when you prioritize self-care, or when you take a break from someone else's drama. Be gentle with yourself as you navigate the complexities of relationships. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being authentic and compassionate towards yourself and others. You're taking the first steps on a journey that will challenge you, but also set you free. Don't give up when faced with setbacks or self-doubt. Every difficult conversation, every boundary set, and every choice made for yourself is a step closer to healing. And as you move forward, know that you're not alone in this journey. There are people who care about you, who want to support you, and who will join you on this path towards wholeness. As we close today's conversation, I invite you to take the next small step towards embracing your true self. Take a deep breath, acknowledge your own worth, and remember that you're doing the best you can. And when the doubts creep in, as they inevitably will, come back to this moment and know that you're stronger than you think. If this conversation has resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel for more content on emotional well-being, mental health, and personal growth. We'll be here, supporting you every step of the way.